Am I the jerk for requesting prayer breaks at work because my religious coworkers do, even though I'm not religious? I'm an atheist who works in an international company in a very busy city. I have a lot of coworkers who come from a certain religious background that requires them to pray multiple times a day. I would say 90% of my coworkers share this faith, and maybe 70 to 80% of them take the time out to go pray every day. They get to leave the office 2 or 3 times a day for 10 minutes apiece for prayer, and they get paid the same. Don't need to take time out of their lunch, etc. I used to resent this and asked my boss, who belongs to that faith, why they were essentially having an extra paid 30-minute break a day for doing the same work I do. She couldn't give me a response, other than the religious considerations have to be made. Even though I'm a known atheist, I decided I too wanted some time to meditate every day. I told my manager I needed the same time as my coworkers and told her it was very important to me. She initially said no. And then I got a hastily written email saying of course I was welcome to take that time to meditate the same day. She obviously checked with HR and covered her ass. For the last 6 months, I've been having my 30-minute meditating out in our company garden every day. This has caused a slight issue because other non-religious people are starting to ask if they too can have meditative time, and it's causing friction. But in my opinion, either everyone should be able to have this or no one should. I recently told a friend this story and she reacted negatively. She said that I was being rude and ruining it for everyone else, and that at Christmas time, my coworkers usually go over and beyond to fill in holiday hours. That way the rest of us can enjoy our holidays, and at the same courtesy should be extended to them. I told her I'm not hurting anybody or taking their prayer time away from them, simply enjoying that privilege myself. I don't think you are really being a jerk with the current situation, as you have not taken away from those with religious beliefs. If it did come to a point where your demand was the reason prayer breaks got taken away completely, then you would be the jerk. Your friend also made a great point about your religious coworkers taking extra hours so the rest of you can enjoy holidays. You should appreciate this. But I don't agree with her saying you were rude, as I don't see how you have come across that way in any point of the story. I went on vacation with my friend and her family, and they kicked me out. I got my own room and stayed. I am in college, and my roommate from last year, Meg, whose family is really rich, said she could bring a friend on vacation. It was kinda awkward. I was her third choice, but her family vetoed the first two because they didn't want her bringing a boy or this other female friend of hers they disliked. Her parents bought my plane ticket and booked the resort, which I was very grateful for, and I saved a lot of money up so I could make sure I buy my own food and activities when I'm there, and treat her family to a dinner as a thank you for the ticket. But when the trip started, it was just bad. It was her, me, her mother, her father, 2 of her father's friends, and her 3 brothers going. On the flight, they all got first class and got me an economy ticket. But I didn't say anything because why argue about a free ticket? The first night, they went to a grocery. It turns out they wanted to cook at the resort kitchen for the whole trip. And by they wanted to cook, it actually turned out they wanted me and Meg to cook. I wasn't warned about this, but it turns out Meg's family is super traditional, that they see cooking as a woman's job, and her mom had just had hand surgery. So it was me and Meg cooking every meal for 6 men and her mom, and I can't cook well. I know a couple staple meals to feed myself, but since I rarely eat meat, I don't know how to cook it. I'm also okay at cooking for 1 or 2, but have no practice cooking for a group of 9. I screwed it up, undercooked the chicken, and overcooked some steak, and her dad was angry with me. I got short with him, and I told him that if he knew how to do better, he could pitch in instead of standing around criticizing. But he got furious and said he was on his vacation. I said that I was trying to have a vacation too. Or did they invite me to be an unpaid domestic servant? Meg's parents and dad's friends got angry I said that and started yelling at me. The argument escalated. I sarcastically called myself the help. Her dad snapped at me and told me to get out of the suite and go home. Didn't say anything about how he expected me to do that. I left and called the airline with my ticket and asked them if they could do anything to prevent anyone else from modifying or canceling my ticket. They let me set a passcode, and no changes could be made to the flight without it. Then, I went to the resort desk to ask about rooms, saying I was stranded unexpectedly. They actually did have some affordable rooms available because of a weekday discount, so I got housing and still had money left over for touristy stuff. I went sightseeing and relaxed on the beach for 3 days, until Meg's parents ran into me. They were taking a sunset walk and did a double take, seeing me on the beach. They said they thought I was going home, and I said I decided to stay. They were angry because they saw me staying and using the return flight as having deceived them into thinking I couldn't afford a vacation and using them for flights when I could actually afford things. Am I the jerk for staying on that vacation and using the flight home? I've been there. It can be a lot of fun to be able to go on vacation with your friend's family, but can also be very awkward. Meg's family seems like horrible people to be expecting you and Meg to do all the work. Very brave of you to instantly stand up for yourself and show them you weren't going to put up with their nonsense. You didn't say anything about being able to afford it or anything like that. It was literally their choice to offer you the vacation. You have no reason to feel like the jerk in this situation. Am I the jerk for isolating a student based on religion? I teach second grade, and I work at a school where we celebrate Christmas because it's a very tight-knit community where almost all families are Christian. We also celebrate Halloween, New Year's, St. Patrick's Day, etc., and always plan fun activities and parties during those weeks. We learn all about other cultures and their holidays as well. This year, I got a new student who is a Jehovah's Witness. I'll call her Jay, and her mom is the other proposed jerk. Apparently, Jehovah's Witnesses cannot celebrate birthdays, any type of holiday, and cannot take a political stance. I was fine with that and figured she'd just ignore them, but I was wrong. It started when I was teaching the government unit in social studies. Jay would cover her ears or eyes during lessons and interrupt to say she isn't allowed to look at flags, and asked if I could take it off the screen. I asked if I could just put her in a breakout room during social studies until we finished and have her work on other things. Her mom and my boss gave me the okay to put her in breakout rooms and exempt her from the rest of the unit. The next incident was on one of my students' birthdays. We sang, and afterwards, I was talking to the child about their plans when Jay interrupted and said she isn't allowed to be part of birthdays. I got a little snarky and said, "Well, this student does, and I'm discussing it with them, so you can just try to tune it out." She made a face, took her headphones off, and walked away. The last incident was before break. My coworker shared a bunch of Christmas activities, videos, and books. I decided to use them too, and planned to put Jay in a breakout room if she started to complain. She hadn't said anything yet, so I was reading a Christmas book when Jay's mom came on camera and started scolding me in front of my class, saying I had been disrespecting her child's religion, neglecting her by putting her in breakout rooms alone, and embarrassing her by telling her to stop listening. I told her that our school celebrates Christmas, and that in general, I think children should learn about other religions and learn to accept others' beliefs. Mom logged her off my Zoom in response. I came back from break to angry emails from Jay's mom that had my boss CC'd, demanding something be done. Apparently, she was offended that I sent all the kids gifts over break. It was just books and toys and bags. I talked to my boss, and she didn't seem to take any sides at all. Well, I want to continue what I've been doing. I feel Jay is ruining the experience for my other kids and taking away from their learning, because I firmly believe we should talk about all religions. I especially want to be able to talk to them about things going on within our country. I want to keep teaching my class my way and put Jay in breakout rooms if she complains, but know her mom will be unhappy, so I'm kind of worried. Maybe I am being dismissive of their religion. Am I the jerk for isolating this child due to her religion? I understand your frustration with the girl's mother, but I think it would be better if you handled it in a more positive way. Explain that while you respect her beliefs, you want everyone in the class to feel comfortable. I think putting her in the breakout room was the best option for you, as this way she isn't involved with anything that contradicts her religion, but if her mother is adamant that she doesn't want her there, then they both need to accept that not everything she hears in class is going to be in line with their religion. I was called a hoe because I lost my virginity, and entitled mom couldn't handle it. I got hoe shamed and made to feel like trash by Mormon fiance's mom. It's important to note that I'm 30 now, so this happened when I was still in high school. So I met this guy when I was 16, and we started dating. Fast forward 2 years, and we are both out of high school and engaged. Looking back on it, an 18-year-old has no business being engaged. Anyway, my then fiance had been raised Mormon, and wanted me to convert to the religion, as that what was expected by me and everyone in his big Mormon family. So I went through all the lessons and got baptized in the church. That part is important. His family was Air Force, and so they moved around a lot. So shortly after he proposed, his family moved to Colorado, so the relationship became long distance. That summer, when he came to visit, things got hot and heavy, and we ended up losing our virginity to each other. I had been raised to save myself for marriage, and figured since I was engaged to this guy, who at the time was the love of my life, it was basically the same thing. Big mistake. So a few days later, he gets typical Mormon guilt and decides to tell both his parents and his bishop at church. Next thing I know, my mom gets a call from fiance's mother telling her that I am no longer welcome at their home. When my mom asked why, she was told that Jezebels and harlots aren't welcome in their house of the Lord, because my son would never have been tempted or agreed to any of this if your daughter wasn't such a temptress. At this point, my mom goes off on her, telling her that she hates to break it to her, but it takes two to tango, and she might want to have a conversation with her son, as he was more than capable of making that decision on his own, as we are both 18. His mother then hangs up in my mom's face, and for the next 2 weeks, proceeds to make a point to call our house at least twice a day, leaving messages on our answering machine about how much of a hoe I am, how God hates me, and I should be ashamed of myself. At this point, I honestly had no experience in handling any of this and would be reduced to tears on the daily. From a religious perspective, I understand the value of chastity before marriage, but when you resort to the acts of harassment and slander, it's beyond my comprehension even to this day. You might be asking what consequences befell my fiancé during all of this. Nothing. absolutely nothing. He told his parents and they forgave him, and told him he was a victim and not responsible. His bishop, the Mormon equivalent of a pastor, told him to ask God for forgiveness and read his scriptures daily. To make matters worse, his mother decides to make a phone call to the bishop at my church and tell him everything that happened. Next thing I know, I'm getting pulled into his office and told that my sin was second only to murder and that God and His grace have abandoned me. I was beside myself in tears. Furthermore, I was told that I was no longer allowed to teach Sunday school and I wasn't permitted to sit with anyone during the sermon. That's right, I was made to sit by myself and separate from everyone just to drive the point home that I wasn't worthy to sit with everyone else. The whole experience was absolutely horrific and caused me a lot of trauma that I had to work through as a result. His mother still maintains to this day that I am the worst person on the face of the planet and that her son is a saint. Needless to say, we broke off our engagement and went our separate ways. I can't imagine how difficult it must have been for you. I think you handled yourself incredibly well and did everything right in this situation by not losing your cool and flipping out. It's a real shame that your fiance couldn't stand up for you against the abuse that was being perpetrated on you. I guess this shows you what kind of person they were. You deserve to be treated with respect and dignity, and the way that your mother-in-law treated you is inexcusable. You should be proud of yourself for getting out of an abusive relationship before it got even worse. Entitled mother thinks that her religion dictates my lifestyle. So my boyfriend and I have been dating for 3.5 years. His parents have been entitled throughout this entire time, and 100% of this entitlement stems from the idea that if I do not follow their religion, then I am not respecting their religion. For example, when I was first introduced to Entitled Mother, this was in a restaurant, she asked me why I had ordered a salad. I explained that I was vegetarian, and that was one of the few vegetarian options at this restaurant. She told me that not eating meat is haram. I know this is false. I have several relatives, in fact everyone in my family except my parents and brother are Muslim, and in fact the dish she got was haram, not halal, steak. I just changed the topic and hoped that would be it. Of course, it wasn't. Every time I visit their house, she goes out of her way to ensure all of her dishes contain meat, even the ones that don't traditionally contain meat. Meanwhile, she accuses me of being disrespectful because I'm not eating her cooking. After a few months of this, she decides that because premarital relationships are against her religion, I have to get married. I completely fail to see how these two things are connected, but she started applying a lot of pressure on this. My mom, also not a Muslim but an expert negotiator, suggests that we instead do a Quran reading ceremony with the extended family present. Apparently this was acceptable to her, so we rounded up the extended family on both sides and watched my boyfriend's grandma, the oldest person in either family, read a verse of the Quran. I didn't consider this a marriage, but if it gets Entitled Mother off my back, then great. Entitled Mother becomes tolerable for a while, and I learned to just bring my own food if I ever come over, which is very rare. So things quiet down for a while, at least from my end. My boyfriend, who still lives with them, still has a curfew of 9 p.m. No alcohol or weed allowed in the house, weed is legal where we live, etc. Despite being 22 years old at this point. In the middle of all this, I get accepted to medical school, which means leaving the city for another city approximately 2 hours away. I wasn't looking forward to being long distance, but at least I don't have to deal with Entitled Mother anymore. Entitled Mother considers being long distance to be the same thing as being broken up apparently, and starts bringing over girls for my boyfriend to consider marrying. He tells all the girls that he's already seeing someone obviously, and it causes an argument with his mom every time it happens. One time, Entitled Mother brings him a 16-year-old. I have no idea what she intended with that, considering my boyfriend was 22. Anyways, at this point, COVID hits, and he's no longer required to live in that city for school, so he immediately moves in with me. Entitled Mother goes full insane. If dating while not married is haram, can you imagine how bad living together while not married is? Entitled Mother gets the dad involved at this point. He's just as religious, but he has to work more than full time. Entitled Mother doesn't work, and is usually too tired to start anything. However, for this, he decides to make an exception. They demand to meet with us in person, despite COVID and the whole region being in lockdown. In a moment of profound stupidity, we for some reason agree to this. Don't ask me what brought on this massive brain fart. Maybe I just used up all my brain cells on the most recent exam or something. So anyways, we meet with them in person, and Entitled Dad goes on about how ashamed he is when he has to explain that his son is living with his girlfriend that he is not married to. Entitled Mother starts crying and explaining that no amount of praying can save us from the depths of hell we've gotten ourselves into. She chooses this time to give a graphic description of exactly how painful hell will be for us, which she seems quite to enjoy. At the end of this, they ask when we'll be getting married. Whenever we want to, I say. Entitled Mother goes on and on about how rude and disrespectful I'm being, and how I apparently managed to corrupt her previously devout son away from God, etc., etc. This was about a year ago. Entitled Mother is trying to make everything about us getting married. Trying to be polite, we invite them over for lunch during a break in the lockdowns. They say, not until we get married. I overhear during a phone call, this entitled mother has some questions about the COVID vaccine, and being a medical student, I volunteer to help answer some questions she might have. Not until we get married. I invited my boyfriend's sisters, age 20 and 23, but they still live with the parents, to go on a camping trip, but entitled mother says she won't let them go until we get married. I should mention that prior to this, I'd never seen a Muslim abuse their religion this way. I get along with my extended family who are quite religious, mostly because they understand that their religion is something about them, not something about me. I'm glad you have a good boyfriend who supports you and helps you. You're right. Your in-laws don't really have a right to force religious beliefs onto you. You and your boyfriend seem great together, so it'd be real nice if they could just accept you for who you are and wait until you're both ready for marriage. You should stand up for yourself more in these situations. The way your in-laws are treating you is so unfair. They expect everyone else to do what they say, but when it comes to them doing what others say, they just ignore it. Also, the way they talk about some of the issues seems very un-Islamic to me. Islam teaches us that we cannot be judged by anyone except Allah or God, and even then, He will only judge us based on our intentions and deeds, and not what other people think or say about us. I hope you can all find a way to sort some of these things out with each other, as it really does seem like you have a great relationship with your boyfriend. Am I the jerk for signing off on a professional email with Assalamu alaikum? I have arrived at my current job for almost 3 years. It is a smaller company with less than 100 employees scattered across a handful of regional offices. Because I work with people in different offices quite a bit, a lot of my communication is via email. There is one person in particular who I work with who has a habit of signing off on emails with God bless you. He will also find ways to put Bible quotes and scripture into his emails that I find rather inappropriate for work. I have never been a religious person, but I was raised by Muslim parents and have nothing against it, and I believe that people should have every right to practice their religion as they see fit. But I also believe that religion shouldn't be forced down anyone's throat, especially in the workplace. After about 6 months at my job, I brought it up to my boss about my coworker's email habit. He said he's aware of it and doesn't agree with it either, but it's a different office and the manager of that office thinks it's okay and I should just try to ignore it. So that's what I did. I bit my tongue and tried to ignore it. For almost 2 years, I ignored it. Until one day, this particular coworker added some scripture to an email he sent me after I told him I was having a rough day. I understand he was just trying to be helpful in his own way, but it just rubbed me the wrong way, and I didn't have the patience for it anymore. So I wrote him an email and copied my boss and his office manager on it, explaining that while I appreciate the sentiment, I would prefer it if he refrained from including any religious material in any and all future correspondence. It was a very professional email, succinct and to the point, but also very clear on what I was trying to communicate. I then signed off on the email with Assalamu alaikum. Not even 10 minutes later, I was called into my boss's office. He asked me what the hell I was doing, mocking someone else's religion like that. I told him I wasn't mocking anything. I was simply conveying to a coworker, in writing, that I would prefer to keep religion out of our future correspondence. He said that it sure as hell seemed like I was mocking my coworker's Christianity by using a Muslim saying in the email. I asked him if he even knew what the phrase meant, and he said he didn't. So I told him it means peace be unto you. I told him if he thinks it's okay for someone to say God bless you in every email, it should be okay for me to say Assalamu alaikum as well. He told me to leave his office and get back to work. A couple days later, there was a company-wide email put out by the CEO outlining new email policies regarding religion, politics, and other personal views. It very clearly laid out that none of that kind of personal viewpoint should be included in any company email. No exceptions. Shortly after that email was sent out, my Christian coworker sent me a text to my personal phone that simply said, "I hope you're happy, jerk." It's a good thing that you first reported it, and even better that your manager was so understanding. If it were me, I would have been scared to report my coworker because I'd be afraid of the backlash or people thinking I was just making things up for attention. After ignoring it for 2 years, I can understand why you'd run out of patience eventually. It's hilarious that it only took 10 minutes for you to get called in for the way you signed your email, despite the way he's been signing his email for years. In the end, I think the new policy being introduced was the best outcome for all.